Hello, Rolanda. I don't think we've met. Where are you from? Oh, wait. Your name does sound familiar now. Who was it that asked me to set that up? Was it?
Good afternoon. So, Rolanda, where are you from?
I just started working here in Klamath Falls for the Klamath Falls City School District.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So you're working with Charity and Damon, and there's one other person, isn't there?
There's a few more people. There's Tanya, Charity, Cassidy, Ruth Ann, and Damon, and the business office.
Okay. And you coming from the city or from another government agency, right?
I came from a tribal agency,
Oh, a travel. Oh, okay.
tribal.
Tribal, not
Oh,
travel.
tribal. That's right. Okay. That's right. That's what I saw Damon in Salem last month, and I think that's what he had told me. Tribal. Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. So
Thank
you
you.
drinking through? Are you drinking through a fire hose? Yeah, I bet. And I'm Scott Cropley, by the way. I should put my actual picture up there. I got a new one. I don't know if I can do that. Let's see, edit profile picture. Let me see if I can find something. I didn't do my hair this morning, so I'm not gonna put a do video. Although I probably could. Doesn't look that bad.
Scott, are you related to anybody in Alaska?
I'm sorry?
Are you related to anybody in Alaska?
There are a lot of Cropleys in Alaska, around the Juneau area. There's actually Lake Cropley on Douglas Island, across from the downtown Juneau. And my dad we worked in Alaska, but no Inuit people that I know of. But I know
I'm thinking of Chris Cropley.
the name does not, is he Inuit or is he,
I think he may be Tlingit.
yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but he lives in Anchorage at this time, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But he works with folks in through Tlingit and Haida. He's an IT guru guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't. The name is not familiar. I mean, Chris. I mean, I have a lot of cousins that I probably don't know. Don't know where they all are. No, it's still just us. Funny story, in Portland last summer, we were having lunch at the deck on the Columbia River, and we were interacting with the waitress the whole time, and we went to pay the bill, and she came back, and she had my credit card. She came back and she said, you're not going to believe this. We have the same last name. And it turns out she was the ex-wife of a cousin's son of mine. So small world. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I just was wondering, I'm from Juneau. So.
Yeah. Let me see. I gotta send me a picture here. Oh, Cynthia. Okay. Good morning or afternoon, Cynthia. Haven't talked to you guys this year. Are you doing okay?
Yes, I think so.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, well, we're getting geared up for our budget season, so we're going to be doing a lot more work here in ESP in the next couple weeks.
Okay. Well, we'll be here if you need it. If you need anything. Let's see. I'm trying to get something. Trying to get a new profile pic here. Time is it? It's about 5 after. Boy, small crowd. How many did we have last week, Tim? We had 8, 6 or 8. Yeah. So,
Oh, sorry. Sometimes trying to find the right window.
Yeah,
I
Zoom.
think we had 7 or 8. I wrote the names down. They're on my desk.
yeah, Zoom, it's kind of hard to find the right window sometimes.
Right. But just so y'all know, and full disclosure, we're going to record this and put it up on our YouTube channel for other people to view. So don't say anything you don't want recorded in posterity. Is that right? Posterity?
Yeah.
It's going to be held against you in the court of law.
Let's see. Cynthia, we actually sailed through the duty code validations pretty well last year, didn't we? Or do you remember? You
That
slept.
way, what?
We sailed through the duty code validations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know, have you got any notices, bulletins on any changes for this year?
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's good.
Not that I'm aware, anyway.
Yeah.
Cynthia, can I ask you a quick question about how Washington State does pay?
Sure, I'll try to answer it.
Okay, my wife, she works for a school district here in La Center, Washington. She's been a paraeducator at a district for 5 years, but she's getting her teaching certificate right now. When she becomes a teacher, will those 5 years still count toward her step or district years of service, or will she start over?
I do not know about that.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be more of an HR question, I think.
right.
I don't know how they calculate the years of experience. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, I updated my photo. Good morning or afternoon, Kim.
Hello.
Okay, well, it's 1:06. Give it another minute or so.
Yeah, I figured we would have more last week than we do this week.
Kim, have you sent out or done your responsibility center sheets yet?
Yeah, we did. We're getting them back today and tomorrow.
Okay. Are you still using your own workbook that you did a long time ago? Or
Yep.
okay.
That's what we're doing this year.
Okay. All right. There's got to be well, hopefully I'll get LBL ESD on board and get the VPN built. I think they've been kind of busy lately, but
Yeah,
in
they're
order-
working at synergy conversion.
right.
Student information system.
Yeah, it seems like have you experienced the whole Citrix, I forget what it's called. Actually, it's a Citrix, but it's actually a wrapper around Citrix. Has that been pretty stable for you guys out in Newport?
Yeah, we haven't had any trouble.
Okay. Some of the districts, it seems like it falls off periodically. But,
Well, yeah, I guess it does. I haven't really paid attention. It doesn't seem to do it when I'm here at work.
okay. All right.
When my internet's unstable, then it can have some issues.
Right.
Did you see that email from Steven? One of his users, it's like, I know they use Citrix, but it says it's real zoomed in, ESP.
I was looking, is it zoomed in or is it just the font setting?
Well, it's hard to tell from the screenshot because they
Right.
just screenshotted ESP, so you can't really tell what is going on. But it all looks, the fonts and all that look good. I told him about the fonts, but I figured maybe there's a zoom for Citrix,
Yeah, that
which
could
might be.
I know that with Citrix there are some there's some settings where it tries to scale, and every
Right.
once in a while I get scroll bars on the side of the Citrix kind of pane or window portal. Unfortunately, I don't use Citrix that often, but we'll have to reach out and see if he was able to do it, and maybe somebody at LBL can help him if they just
Right.
see what's going on. So, all right, well, why don't we get started here? And the idea is to just give you a kind of a basic starting point with budget book, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions. Rolanda, again, I know you've only been in place, what, a couple weeks? So this is going to be really new to you.
And Rolanda, I'm sorry, this is Tim. I work with Scott. You were able to get, I know I set your login and everything up last week. You were able to get logged in and everything okay?
Yes, I believe everything went good. I was able to look around a little bit. And that's about as far as I've gotten. I have only been here, I think this is like my 7th business day here.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, hold on.
Okay,
All
I'm
right.
getting that hose ready. You gotta get something figured out.
Yeah. Okay. So now, Tim, we had that handout from last week. It's we know that the documentation is kind of waning on ESP in general, but even budget book, it's even worser, if that's a word. But we do have a little handout that's got a good starting point. And
You want me to pass that out, Scott?
Yeah, why don't
Okay.
you, if you can get hold of it?
I'm going to put it in the chat, guys. I think you'll be able to get it in the chat.
But to get started, well, first of all, I'm going to show you. I have this demo. This demo budget book profile, and I thought I would just go through the sheets and make sure everybody's kind of aware of the various formattings that's even possible. I don't know, a lot of people may not realize you can do table of contents, and these are actually linked. This is an example of your general fund expense summary rolled up to the high level objects.
You're not sharing your screen. I don't know if you meant to or not.
It's blue. Let me see. Did I not click the? Oh, you actually have to click the share button.
Everyone, I just put a document in the chat. Please let me know if you don't get it.
Okay, can you guys see this now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I'm going to go back here. So you can actually have it create a table of contents. There's some mechanics in there that, because ESP is just going to generate your data, the data section. You're going to have your superintendent's message, all your school information, all the changes that have happened. I can envision where we actually link separate documents and just stitch it all together, kind of a publishing type package. But for right now, the goal is to provide the detailed numbers financial section of your budget book. And you can, once you actually publish the section, you can actually have it create tables of contents, which you can then click and link. You can have full rich text narratives. You have full control over the titles and what's in it. Here's the budget summary at the object level. You can have footers. Here's a link back to the table of contents. Here's a chart top. Thing we added last year is the watermark. You can actually have a watermark show up across all the sheets. If you have a chart, you can have it set up to where the pie or the chart colors, both bar and line and pie charts, you can have the legend actually in the data section. You can have cover sheets with full narrative. Budget book zones. Let's see here. Here's where the chart is actually below the narrative, and then you can have the chart above the narrative. You can actually put it below. You can put it in many different positions. Here's just different variations on colors. Budget book. Here's your vertical chart. This section right here is the actual narrative, and this is all what I call Greek text. You're not supposed to be able to read it. It's just filler text for doing documentation and stuff, so you can format it, large paragraphs or large bodies. Now this guy right here is actually the narrative from the budget element maintenance screen. And in Oregon, this comes from the PBAM, and in Washington, we upload it from OSPI. We try to maintain them. We're gonna have to look at them, make sure they're all current for this year. Welcome, Stacy. I see you dropped in. Stacy, were you able to get updated and everything? Did you get your headers, your narratives done? Oh, she must not have her mic. Okay. Chart here. Here's another chart above, different colors. Another just different variations. Budget, yeah, you color. You can change the color palettes. Oops. Column charts. Summary elements, you can have up to 5. We'll look more about this. Not sure what I showed there. Additional columns. You can put delta change columns in, so you can have the change from the baseline scenario, or running changes from one scenario to the next. There you can add a column that adds the percent of total. So for each item, each row, you can have the percent of total, and it makes sure it always sums to 100. Little note on that. Let me see if special revenue. Here's the special revenue summary. Now, a lot of districts, I'm finding more and more, are budgeting and publishing their special revenue as a single fund. And just aggregating everything up, and not actually showing it in the budget document as individual funds. And I mean, we can support that just through the budget element strings or the budget hierarchies. Here's an example of Title I special revenue, where you can actually show the resources and requirements in the same grouping, and you can actually add a chart to this too. Another little feature we've added this year is the top level summaries. You can actually have them band or have shading, and then the top level summaries you can have. There is actually a color difference. You may want to have different gradients, but you can put change the gradients or actually have it different colors on each of the horizontal bands. There's Title II. I think I just did a bunch of special revenue funds here. And that's it. So on that doc, and to open budget book, you can go reports and then budget book, or this little button right here with the book on it on the toolbar will open the budget book. And this is my demo profile that I printed, and I'm going to minimize this. We'll talk about that little pop-up. When you see this pop-up, and I apologize for people from years past, this was like popping up every single time you saved any changes, and we fixed that. But what this is telling you is that my modeling 5 scenario is not fully calculated. It does not have a green flag. And the premise of the message is, if you're coming and printing a budget book, we want you to be fully aware that the scenario is not fully cooked. There are changes that have been made that haven't been gone through a recalculation. So we're just warning you that there's pending calculations in a scenario in this budget book.
And just to add to that real quick, Scott, sometimes new users, especially, they see numbers in their budget book or spreadsheets and they wonder where they come from, and they come from the same place as in the financial grid. So if a number looks weird in your budget book, go check it on the financial grid in the main form of ESP, because that's pulling from the same place. There is no other magic being done. So it's good to know where they come from.
Exactly. Good point, Tim. I'm budget book. It has the primary capability was to print the actual budget document, but we've added more capabilities so we can do budget status reports, and we can do budget data entry sheets. And we can talk a little bit more about that, those two options at the end. The first stage here is to just get you kind of familiar with the summary levels and how the mechanics of the budget book work together. And see if I can make this bigger. So the magic of the budget book, when you come to setting the data up, if we were to look at this guy right here, this is a roll up from the budget. And in this particular one, we've got 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels. So we've got our object, our second level roll up objects, and then the budget, the account type as our elements. And knowing how to set these up is going to let you build virtually any combination of scenario, or excuse me, a budget book section you want, and roll it up in whichever way you've set up in your budget element editor. And there's, even though the account codes, and everything is relative to our account codes in ESP, which is, this is our account code. We can have up to 12 segments in our account code as long as the whole thing is less than 64 characters. But we don't allow 12 different levels in budget book, because that would just be so much detail. It would be a report that really would be busy. So that's why we only have 6 levels, a base level, and then up to 5 roll-ups. And those roll-ups are very similar to the scope. And let's see if I can zoom this in. So if you're familiar with rolling or setting your scope on your financial grid, and remember Tim just talked about that if you wonder where the data comes from, whatever your scope is here, where's my little legend? Did it make it onto the next? Oh, no, it didn't. Oh, it's up top. I'm sorry. So here, the scope on a budget book section is the same scope that you use in your budget book, or it's the same scope that you use on your financial and employee grid. You can specify the scope as an account mask, and you can also specify the account types. So this is item 1 and item 2. And then the same elements that you can move around on the visual scoping form, you can also set up in budget book. And so in this sample, our base element is, we're going to sum by the object by function, and it's going to be limited to just general fund. Now, if we look over here on the scope form, we can actually see this particular chart of accounts has what, six different account elements. The bottom 3 are what we call summed, or we don't really care. We want everything to roll up. So our base level is the object, just like it is here, and then by function, and then our scope is set at 100. So there's only going to be, we don't need to really worry about adding a fund element because we're only going to have one of them. And that's how the budget book summary elements relate to scope. If you can build a scope on your financial grid, you can also build the same scope in budget book, with the extra added bonus that in the elements, like for function here, we have a 2, so we're summary level 2, and here this object element we have summary level 1, which means we're going to roll this up to the top level objects, which is the highest level it can roll up to, and the function to number 2. Now to get started, we're going to build this, and I'm going to show you what it looks like, and then we're just kind of build on it from there. So I'll bring my budget book back up. I'm going to switch profiles, and I'm going to use an empty template, budget book empty template, and it's going to open up a template, and I'm going to say yes. That's for me. You won't see that message. That's only for us at ESP. But by default, it's going to go out and use the auto scenario mode. It's going to use the current scenario. So whatever scenario was in the main form when you open budget book, it's going to replace the scenarios that have this auto checkbox with whatever was in the main form. So this will always make sure that you have the current scenario that you're using in budget book. In the past, we've had some situations where people they created their approved and adopted and didn't know they actually had to go in and then change these scenarios to be the new version. So we automated that process. So if you start out with your proposed or approved or adopted, if you have this current scenario set, it's going to automatically map the scenarios for you and get you squared away. And then on the sections, it comes in. There's actually no sections, but you click on the plus here, and we're going to add a pretty generic section. It's going to ask me for an account code through the same scope form that you use to control your grid, and I'm just going to put in Fund 100 and just expenses, but I could tell it I want fund balance and revenue, or if you have transfers, objects, or account types enabled, then those would be there as well. Click OK. And we've actually got a very basic budget book section, and all we've done is done a little bit of clicking. So its account mask is 100, our top element is object, and we're not summing by any level. And with your sections, you can either right click and say create budget worksheet, or you can click this toolbar button, which is a little Excel. And at this point, it's important to note that the budget book tool is just a conductor, if you will, of Excel. We're just manipulating Excel in the background and producing the worksheets. And the product is a workbook. It does have the ability when you publish to actually save it as a PDF. I don't know many people who do that because they typically want the worksheets to incorporate in their publishing workflow for their budget book as a whole. But I do know there are people who do save it to PDF, and then they use a PDF tool to merge the different segments. The thing you have to worry about as you're stitching everything together is your page numbering. And let's see what we've got. Okay, so this is our generic budget book report. It's general fund by object, and you can see here's our actuals, or our last year's or current year adopted, and then our proposed next year. Now, I don't have a 23-24 scenarios. I haven't built that yet. I probably should, but this just gives us a worksheet for general fund by object. And you can see it does the totaling, and we only have the base element. Now, if I wanted to make a summary, or actually shorten that up and show another summary, I could change this summary level here to be 1, 2, 3, or none. None is the same as 3 or the highest. But if I wanted to do a top level summary, I would select 1. And so you're going to say, so where does that number come from? That number comes from your budget element maintenance screen, which is this button here, or tools, administration, budget element maintenance. And we try to help maintain this hierarchy for you, but there are cases where you might have to go in and manipulate it. Or new items show up, if they don't fall within the ID code, element codes and ID code masking, you might have to manipulate some things. But this is budget element maintenance. I'm going to expand the whole thing out, and you can see we've got general fund, special revenue funds, capital project funds. And this hierarchy right here is the level. And this summary level column, it's not editable. It's automatically calculated by the placement of the children within the budget element hierarchy. And that hierarchy set, we're going to look at the objects. It's set by this account mask. And what this is saying, I created this regular summary, and it's going to include everything that looks like 011, and then % is a wildcard, very similar to an asterisk in a lot of other applications. And so the 100 salaries, anything that looks like 01 wildcard. And so you can have it build this hierarchy dynamically. And sometimes things fall out, like here's some 160s. So I could actually put these in a 160 hierarchy. License one time, step stipend, license column moves, child care reimbursement. I'm not sure that that would fall under a salary, child care reimbursement. But I could move, you could move these around just by unlocking the hierarchy and then move that up into there. And it actually moves it there, then you can save it. But the key is that's where the summary level comes from. The other thing that we'll be looking at is the budget element narratives. Remember in that sample I showed you, I had my general fund narrative showing up, and that actually comes from this column here. I open the funds up. Here's my general fund narrative. And I have, here's some special revenue narratives. Some of these need to be cleaned up from the old formatting. They didn't used to be rich text. And I see there's actually some old RTF codes in that. We'll just clean these up real quick. So we try to maintain the state level narratives, and there's actually two columns. There's the narrative, and then there's the state narrative, and the state narrative is what, this isn't sized very well. The state narrative is what we update, and if you want something different, you'll just edit it at the narrative level. The other thing that we added a couple of years ago, and I quite frequently name my features after the client or the new customer that we built them for, and we have the pleasure of having Kim Cusick here today, and she is the origin of our fiscal year notes. And the reason we did that is separate from your budget book narrative, which is kind of defined by the state for the general fund. Your special revenue fund levels, just depending on the grant, it would have, you know, a different narrative for each one. But if you want to identify or make specific notes that are key to just this fiscal year, you can edit the fiscal year note. And again, it's rich text. You can do bulleted lists, change font sizes, have colors, bolds. It's not a complete document editor, but it does a pretty good job at just doing basic rich text editing. But that fiscal year note is an option that can be included in your budget book documents. And
You might
yeah.
want to show them the reporting label column too, that they can change.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's a good point too. If let's, and the budget elements are all loaded, they're all loaded from the ERP system, or, you know, from Infinite Visions if you're in Oregon, and Business Plus for the folks in Richland. But sometimes you get really wonky labels. Plus, we also try to proper case things so that they're just more readable for reporting. We get a lot of all uppercase labels on budget elements, and what's the, like, lookup tables, you know, everything's in uppercase, and it really doesn't make for a very aesthetic budget document. So we go through pretty decent proper casing routine, but sometimes the bull, you know, she wins. Like this guy right here, Title 4. That, you know, that we missed that somehow. It looks like we got the Title 4 here, but I'm constantly looking at different rules. But let's say I don't want that. I don't want that little, the big I, the little V. I want to actually have it have a big I and a big V. So if I come in here and I add my reporting label, you can see this cell is editable. I can actually change that to be a capital V. And Budget Book will always use the reporting label over the regular ID and label that was loaded from the ERP system. And so this is how you can manipulate what shows up in the budget book compared to what shows up in the financial grid or in the ERP system. You know, that might be you're repurposing a specific function or specific object or even area or sub area, and you know you're getting down to the wire, and you don't want to have to go into the ERP and change the label, then reload the budget elements and get everything pushed right through. So you can always just drop right into the budget element maintenance and change the reporting label so that it'll read whatever it should be. It does not change it for the main grids. It's only for the reports. So, and whenever you do make a change, it is going to go through and make sure that the hierarchy is set right according to those mask fields. And if anybody has any issues with the way their hierarchy is set up, or they wanting to do some other things, you know, just let us know. We'll figure it out. I have envisioned having alternate hierarchies set up. Just haven't had a real need identified. Nobody specifically asked for it, but we have had discussions with clients on having one roll up that works in one situation, but possibly not another. So if there's no questions, and feel free to use the Zoom chat window. Tim will be watching that. If interrupt me, raise your hand, scream and yell. But if anybody's around you, if you don't turn your mic on, it'll be all in vain. So, okay, so that's the budget element maintenance. Key here is this is where the summary level comes from. This is where the budget narratives come from, and the fiscal year notes comes from. We'll go ahead and close that. Hopefully it's done. Yep, just finished. Okay. And so back here on, triggered there because I shut the form before it was ready. I changed the summary level to 1. Now I'm going to regenerate that sheet. And just for everybody's warning, probably everybody realizes Budget Book does not get any performance awards. It is kind of slow just by the nature of what it does. We've got a new library we can use that basically takes Excel out of it that will speed it up quite a bit, but we haven't started that project yet.
Did you talk about the page limiter or row limiter yet?
That's what I'm going to next.
Okay.
Yeah. First, talk about the saving. So when you're working on your budget books, you know, the idea is to get the formatting done. You can see there's just a bunch of different options with font sizes and colors and bolding and underlines and indents. And if there isn't an option there, you know, a lot of times we can add one fairly easily, but every time we get to the point where we think we've got everything done, what more could they ask for? We still get changes that people want just a slightly different formatting. So this is that same section just summarized now to level 1, which is the top level salaries. And if you notice down here, every time I've done this, you can see I've created multiple Excel. So every time I'm going to create this, it's actually going to open another workbook. And so if you're going to be checking formatting and creating a lot of workbooks, you're going to wind up with a lot of workbooks created on your taskbar. And we have a mechanism in place, both for the save and for the opening. On the ESP master settings, which is where you define the columns, and it's where the kind of the master settings are. And then on the sections, they have their own settings. We'll talk a little bit more of that in a bit. But if you set these options here, set worksheets as saved and close previous workbook, it's going to reopen a workbook. So you're only going to ever have one. I actually created those others in the previous profile that did not have those set. So that's why I had multiple spreadsheets open. But every time I recreate a spreadsheet, it's not going to open another workbook. It'll reuse it. The other option is when you get to sections where you're going to separate by a top level function or a responsibility center, and you can actually create multiple separate worksheets from a top level element. Like if you wanted to do a separate page for each function, or separate section, not necessarily page, for each function with its own total and narrative, you could do that. But every time you wanted to check the formatting, you're not going to want to run through, 150 different functions. So you can set this page limit to just show you the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You just put a number in there, and it's going to let you just see the first 2 or 3 sections or top level elements. Usually that's enough. Sometimes 5 to see if all the variations are being shown correctly, and we'll actually change that when we get to a top level. But for right now, I'm going to take this same general fund and I'm going to add a new element to it. I want to show everything by function. So I'm going to say, show me my general fund, Fund 100, objects at a high level by function. Now, if I were to just generate this, I don't know how many functions there were, but it's going to take a lot of time. So I'm going to actually summarize this even further, and I'm going to say, show me the top level function. So this is going to be a function by object summary, and we'll generate that. There's little things in there that if a section only has one item in it, do you want it to include a summary for that item? You can actually start to minimize the number of lines that occur in each grouping or in each summary level. If you have forced leading zeros in your IDs in your budget elements and you want to trim those off, there's a function to do that. You can say, this is actually a new feature, separate worksheet. You can actually force a separate worksheet at something other than the top level element. It used to be you could only do a separate worksheet at a top level element, but you can actually force a worksheet at any level now. Which in some of these you just have to go in and play with and see what they can do for you, because everybody has so much time. Okay, so here's that same general fund, but now we've got our top level function, and you can see right here it has the function and objects, so it actually defines the elements in the hierarchy. And so look at this guy. This is an example of a single level or a single item. And it did, even though there's only one item in there, it did include a summary that's showing us the same amount. That little feature here includes single summaries. If I uncheck that and regenerate that, it should not show a summary line for that single element, or that single row, I should say. And while that's building, you can see some of these options they're gray. They have the word default, or see these check boxes are actually what we call tri-state. They're either checked, unchecked, or grayed. And if they're in the grayed state, that means that there's a setting over on the master settings that controls that. And so it makes it really easy to change the look and feel of every section in your budget book by using the master settings tab and leaving the individual settings at their defaults, because it will revert back or defer to the master settings if they're gray or set to the default. And it will calculate page breaks. Okay, so you can see right here, see, I'm no longer including a summary line because it's actually redundant information. And the key to know is that the summary line is actually there in order to make all the summing formulas work. Oh, I have to unprotect it. It does automatically protect the worksheet if you set it up, and you can put a password on it. If I do, oh no, home, format, auto fit, row height. Oh, it's there, but in order to make it look right, I actually made the text white also. So if I do auto, so there's that hidden summary that we hid for single items. Some people like it, some people don't. It's, again, there's 1,001 options, and I'm going to set it back to gray. Let's do this. I'm going to change this a little bit further. I'm going to go back to no summary. That's my top element. I'm going to limit this to be the top, let's say, 5 separate elements. I'm going to say, so above those summary elements, I'll go back here. Remember, we have our up to base element plus 5. So a total of 6 elements. And then this is my summary element 5, summary element 4, 3, 2, 1, and then my base element. So this is how they are. And you can see in this example how you can vary the font size, the underscoring and the bolding and the indentation for each of those summary elements. And you can do it globally on the master settings, or you can actually do it individually. But I'm going to then go to separate elements, and I'm going to say I want to separate by separate elements, and I want to include top element titles. And so I'm going to get 5. I'm not going to do a page break, and I'm not going to do separate worksheets. Let's see what that looks like. Anybody asking any questions yet, Tim?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
You're doing a wonderful job.
I know everybody's pretty much used to Zoom these days, but it's really hard when you can't look at somebody and actually see and develop understanding. So COVID's really done a number on our personableness. So this is where I tell a joke. So a teacher, a principal, and an administrator all went into a bar. No, I'm just kidding. He was actually a counselor, not an administrator. Okay, I'm gonna turn page break calcs off because it. Okay, so there you can see, you know, we're still just all working with the very same section. Now we've got primary programs, elementary, extracurricular, middle school, and you can see how it's creating sections for each one. And then there's a master section total at the bottom. So I'm going to make a couple of other changes. First of all, I'm going to, for time's sake, I'm going to go down to 3. And you can see now how it's, that limiter works, so you can check stuff out. On that, one of the things we talked about, or maybe I skipped it over. I might not have in the layout, the zones. Where were the zones? So in the top level heading box, this number 5, this guy right here, this is where we have, it's called our element label. And then we have the column labels and the column type. The column label being these guys right here, the fiscal year. And then the column type is the little $sign, or if we were including FTE, it would say FTE or whatever you wanted it to show. But you have a lot of flexibility with what we call the element heading, this guy right here. And I thought I had changed this little template to turn it off altogether. But I'm going to go over to my settings, and where it says column headings, it's a grouping in the properties. I see my heading label format. And right now it's set to 111. So you can see it's just showing the function ID, which is pretty ugly as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to add the name and the heading label. Now I can also have it be the section title, or actually add the section narrative there, but the section narrative, if it's big, it's going to fill that whole spot up. I'm just going to change it to be heading, label, ID, and name. And then go back over to here, and in my label, I'm going to say howdy. And so this can be unique for every section. And then I'm also going to turn on include narrative, ID. No, I don't want that. I just want the narrative itself. I don't want to include the section narrative. That should be at the top. Actually, I'm going to go down. And on the page setup, I'm going to say, on the narrative, I'm going to say, I want to include the fund narrative, the fund narrative at the top. And you can see, it can see which elements you have built. And the format is going to be ID, name, and then the narrative. And let's put the fiscal note in there too. So now you can, and the way these little flag editors work is you're moving from left to right. It's going to start on the left with the ID, then it's going to add the element name, a colon, and then it's going to have the narrative and then the fiscal note. And let's see if that works. Oh, I was going to turn off page calculation. Page breaks continue to evolve. They've actually gotten pretty good, but that when I headed out on that endeavor like 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't used to do any breaks. They were just worksheets that went on forever, and then users would have to go in and put in their own work break or their own page breaks and then copy the heading boxes down and all that stuff. But currently we'll do all of that for you. You can set your keep together rows, kind of balance it out to where everything's splitting properly. Pagination seems to be working really well. And this time we're only going to show 3 elements, but we've added a lot more content to it. And it didn't put the narratives in there. Oh, I might have to put in inline narratives. Yeah, I didn't add that. I have to tell it the format here, ID, name. I should have overridden that. That's something I've got to fix. Generate that again. Hopefully it'll come out now. Because I had to set that same thing on the inline narratives, it should have used it. But here are the things where you can actually change the shading of the background on when the inline narratives do show up. A little bit of information on the status line, which is the bottom of all our forms. This little panel right here has got the little gray database on it. It says 15. That actually tells us how much time it took to collect the data. And then the other is the total processing time. So it took us 15 seconds to get the data, but a full minute to just get it laid out and showing properly. Okay. And it's still not showing me the narratives, but you can see there's our total. Here's our, I put howdy in the total label instead of the element label, but you can see we're now showing something more meaningful. We could actually add the ID 1121 middle school programs to the title also. And 10, and then this, if you ever need to verify your formulas, if you select that, everybody who knows, word protected, unprotect sheet, you all know how to, do this and verify that your formulas are coming in from where you want to. Now I'm curious why my inlines aren't Inline narratives, label, and border, function. Oh, I have too many of these. Oh, on this I don't want ID name. That makes it too, but it should have picked this up from up there. Let's see, one more try. With feeling this time. But you can see sometimes it takes a few tries to get things looking exactly the way you want. But once they're set up, your profiles are good. Just changing the scenario will change the data underneath it. But once you get a format and a budget book you like, you don't have to create a new one each year. Just call it budget book. A lot of people have gone in and created a budget book 2019, a budget book 2020, a budget book 2021. There's really no need to do that unless you really want to preserve the format of the prior year. But if you're not planning on making any dramatic changes in the look and feel, you can just reuse the thing over and over again. There was a time where budget book it was changing so quickly that saving a copy of it was sometimes a worthwhile endeavor so you could get back to it. But the last few years have been pretty decent. And still no LNS. All right, I will have to, I'm just not, I wish I had a document I could read. But it should actually be putting the narrative right here. With the below the title. And if I take the, let's see if I take the top element title out. Is this going to generate the whole thing?
Does the narrative exist in budget element maintenance?
For the functions, I think
Yeah.
so. That'd be kind of funky if they went away. Yeah. Oh, that's the objects, functions. Yeah, it looks like they're there. And let's burst it out. Yeah. Yep, they are there. Out of those first 5, we should have got some. Let's see. Functions, yeah, 1,000, 10, 11. I have a feeling this is doing all the functions because I didn't have separate element limit on. So in that case, I could have used a row limiter. Which would have limited the number of rows that it brought back. All kinds of little settings in this for the scope. If you want to make sure you don't show any like 50-cent items or really minuscule dollar amount levels, you can put an amount threshold. So this says that everything absolute value, I think its absolute value has to be greater than 1.0. Didn't really need the minus sign. If you're using your active flag on budget element maintenance, you could limit it to just the elements that have been activated. You can limit it to just object groups, and you can create object groups just for budget book. They're not the same object groups that you use in your assumptions and calculations. You can actually create placeholder accounts that don't have any dollars in them and force them to come out. Okay, so it is getting that narrative, but it's not getting the function narrative, and it did do all of them. All right, I'm going to come back to that and move on, but we should have had right below this line, there should have been a box that went across there that showed the narrative for primary programs. And then you can show it for each of the functions. Or if I were to add to the bottom of this scope element, if I could add my functions. And I know a lot of districts, they'll create a legend or a sheet that has just the fund IDs and the narratives ahead of all the data. And it would do that data row limit. Let's do 100. No, because I'm sum to object. Let's do 50. So I'm going to limit it to 50 rows coming back, just because these do take too much time to generate. And while we're doing this, let's take just 5 minutes. My throat's getting dry. I'm going to get something to drink, and I'll be right back.
Guys, I'm still here, so if you have any questions you want to throw at me while we're sitting here, just let me know. All right.
still didn't put the narratives in there. Darn it. Okay. Or didn't put the fiscal note in there yet either. Narratives and footers left. Format. Fiscal note. Format. Section narrative. No. Oh, it was supposed to put the functions, and that's what we were going for. Well, I will have to figure out. I'm sure I've got a setting wrong. I just don't know which one it is.
This is when limiting the spreadsheet really comes in handy when you're troubleshooting like this.
Okay. So then let's see. I want to do. Let's kind of change groups. Now, let's say I like that. I'm going to leave it like it is. I can name it whatever I want. That's just 100 general fund. I'm going to create a new section. And the way you do that is you just click the plus, and it's going to clone the section that's above it. So I'm just going to click plus. It's going to clone it. I'm going to change this to 200-206. And you can put in dash ranges, you can put in comma lists. You don't have to use the from and the to boxes. This is just like putting 200 there and 206 there. We're going to limit this to just 200 to 206, and we'll call this special revenue. And in this case, I want to show it. I want to show my fund balance and my revenue. And top element, I want, instead of showing the function, actually I can't. I'm going to leave the function there. So we're going to show, I'm going to go back to top level element or summary level 1, just to speed things up. And then there's 3 other types of elements. There's the account type, which is what I'm going to set this to. And then you also have budget control group and employee budget control group. And there's actually a 4th one called responsibility center. If I had a responsibility center in scope here, I would have been able to set the top element to a responsibility center. But now with my account type, and account type 1 is actually going to merge fund balance and revenue into resources. If I were to set that to none, it would actually have a separate section for fund balance and a separate section for revenue and a separate section for expenses. But the default on account type is 1. Haven't seen anybody ever break fund balance out from the revenue, but it is possible. So, and I'm not going to separate. Oh, I am going to separate by top elements, but I'm not going to do a page break. Oh, let's see. There is something I want to change. I'm going to set my top element 3 at account type. And because I put 3 different, or about 4 different funds, I'm going to make this my fund. And summary level, there's no real roll up there. So I have to change this to none. And then I'm going to separate by top element, and I'm going to create a separate worksheet for each fund. And I'm going to have the top element. I'm going to use the top element title, which is going to be my fund, to be the actual worksheet top element title. Okay, that's a lot. And I'm artificially limiting this to 3. I'm going to take this out, because I'm only there's only like 3 or 4 funds in there. So now I'm going to expect to see a separate worksheet for each fund in the range of 200 through 206. Oh, there's only 2 in that range. They're telling me it's only going to create 1 of 2. There's 1. Okay. Oh, now it's doing it. Now it's showing Title 1, showing all the funds I put in that range. Title 1 revenue, Title 2 revenue social. What did I screw up? We're supposed to separate element by account type and then by fund. Oh, the top element. I see what I did wrong. I did want to leave this at fund. I apologize. Fund and account type. Because that's what we want to split on, the fund and so the account type. All right. And that's why there was only 2 sections, because it did revenue and resources. Now we should have about 5 or 6 sections, which if knowing there's that many, it's going to take longer. I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. Go back over to settings and change that to we'll just do 2. Want to look at charts before we get too far along. Now it's doing it right. 201, Title 1. So as you're diving into this, some people have inherited their budget books, and all they do is go in and reproduce it. But if you are tasked or feel the need to go in and change things, add sections, if you have any questions, you just want to discuss about strategy, how the best way to show something, just drop us a note. And if you actually set up a spreadsheet that kind of shows what you want to do and send it to us, we could probably noodle on it before we get back to you. Or we might be able to just tell you, oh yeah, create a section like this, and help you out to get things going the way you want them. I've been pretty successful at looking at districts' budget books and creating something that's really close to what they historically had provided. because you don't want to alter the way the thing looks from year to year too dramatically, too often. You might be able to get away with it, but if you change the way it looks and feels every year, then your constituents are going to be confused and probably ask a lot more questions. Like, well, last year we did this. So being consistent from year to year is also extremely important, and ESP's budget book will help with that. There we go. So now we've got, again, I'm getting all the funds that were within that scope. And then here we have the Title I, resources, revenue, requirements, and then two, and it's showing the narrative for this particular fund. We should have, yeah, so it's actually duplicating Title I Part A, Title I Part A. So I can easily take that out. And I'm going to show you an example. Notice how this is our top level summary, and this is our top level title, and this is our top level summary, top level heading we call it. I'm going to go take these scope elements out. And I'm going to go over to master settings. And I'm going to go to, and there's a little collapse expand where you can get the thing fully expanded or collapsed. I'm planning for next year adding a little search box right here where you can actually search for a property like narrative or color or shading. But I'm going to say the top element headings I want to shade, and the summaries I want to shade. And I'm going to make this 80 because I think we saw that there wasn't a lot of difference. And the way this follows the same standard of shading as Excel. And these properties that have a little tool blip next to them means that there's a tooltip there. And it says adjust the color band used for the, I got to change that, where minus 100% to 100%, where 0 is the fill color. And this fill color is fill color 1, which is this. And let's see, the top element headings also use fill color 1. But let's say I change fill color 2 to be a light blue. And I change the top element headings to be fill color 2. 50%. Okay. And I took these off. Oh. And on the sections here, I want to do the ID name. I want to do all of that. And over here, the fund. I want the whole thing there. Oh, this one might override it. ID name. Yeah, I bet it does. Okay, I'm actually going to save this. Okay, and then go back to where we were. And we'll generate that one more time. So just like Excel, it's trying to figure out where the property is you want to change. still on one.
There is a, if one's running too long and you want to stop it, sometimes you can try to stop it with the kill button,
Cancel button right here.
cancel, but it just depends on where it's at in the process of whether or not it'll work.
Yeah, it can be pretty persnickety because we're manipulating Excel. I mean, Excel is actually running, and we're like a super fast typist, and we're just going through all this stuff programmatically that you can do, yourself. But we're doing it a lot faster, very slow in computer time. Okay. Yeah, Tim, what was that?
Well, I was just going to say one thing. Sometimes people, when they're building their scope, they enter the wrong number, and if there's no data, when there's no data, you'll get a message down there at the bottom. If you can point to that, Scott, the bottom left where the
status line right here.
Yeah, it'll say like no records found. And I get phone calls, Tim, I don't know what's going on. And again, it's just because something's wrong in the scope, and no dollars were actually returned. So you won't get any spreadsheet at all. So that's the first thing we always look at when there's no records returned, is go look at the scope and see what you have selected.
Right. And I'm going to show you something cool in a minute that a lot of people may not have known we added a year or so ago. So now here you can see, I changed the banding of the top element headings, and I said make it blue. And you can see the top level summary it is a light gray. So that gives you some visual separation for your section. And here's then the Title 201 grant or Title 201 narrative with the ID and label. And here's our Title 2A. So you can see you can do a lot with just formatting. I can let's add. I wanted to add a chart. So let's add a pie chart to this. So I've come down and down here in the top property group is the chart, and I'm going to add a 3D pie exploded. It's working pretty well. Height and width, any minus number should make it go and refer to the chart defaults on the master settings, which is 90% of width and 50% of the width for the height. So just putting something negative in the individual chart will make it look back to the settings, the master setting. And minus ones, again, same thing. 3D depth, 50%. Our round edge, -1. Again, it's going to use the round edge from the master settings. The data label, it says only name and value, but I'm going to add the ID, name, value, and percent into the pie chart. And I'm going to fool it. I'm going to tell it now only produce one section. So it's just going to produce the first grant. That, what was it, Title 1 probably. The chart. Okay, primary access. All right, generate it. There's some cool things that we do that you can't do in a chart directly through Excel. And what we see predominantly pie charts being used in Budget Book, but we do have a district who does column charts, and you can do horizontal bar or vertical column charts. But in the pie chart, we also don't want you to have to touch the Budget Book unless it's absolutely necessary. So we've done some cool things. This option right here, interleave values. The way Excel by default arranges the pie segments are by amount. So it starts with the small segments and then moves to the larger segments. But that really makes it kind of fun for getting your labels and extension lines to not sit on top of each other. So we added a function called interleave values where it will move the small values in between the big values. And why didn't we get a chart? Here, columns auto. Should do that even for the separate ones. Let's go up and add the chart to here. 3D pie exploded. ID name value percent. Data label position. Maybe that's what I didn't have. No, because it should have shown the chart. You can put borders on here. There's that interleave values. And I want to check on this section, my summary elements, object. I actually want to just look at object. Actually, watch this. I'm going to do object 2. Now, this is one thing that ESP budget book doesn't allow. I've got object and object where 2, it has to be lower than the one below it. So it says summary element 1 is greater than summary element 0, or the base element. So I have to set this to something less, and now it's good. It doesn't make sense in the flow to have an object at summary level 2 and then an object without a summary level. So let's see what this looks like. No, I should have taken the top level summary out. Let's see what it looks like. No, we lost Klamath Falls.
Yeah. She said she had another meeting to go to, but she's going to watch the video.
Okay. Yeah. Needed to take this off. Now it should be fast. But you can see that color I added to the top level heading. I changed it on the master settings, but we were playing with this section when I did that. But you could see in that last worksheet I generated, it actually was using it there to get that blue top level heading. Adding a chart, that's a winner right there. Oh. So this is what happens when you get too much data. And I didn't summarize it anything, but this is at the level 2. And I don't think anybody would want to include that in their budget book. However, we can fix it by making this object level 1 and this, yeah, we can leave it at 2. And it's smart enough to know that even though we're going to have a roll up at this level, that the chart is going to use the highest level element that's included in the worksheet. So it's actually going to build the chart based on the top level object, and the chart will ignore the detail of the base element.
Scott, did you show them how to save the spreadsheet to their computer, back to their computer yet?
No, we can do that. Although it's hard for me to do that because I'm not actually on Citrix.
Oh, right, yeah.
You should have talked about that before we did this, because I could have. No, I don't even.
Well, just run it. Open it up on a cloud.
Yeah.
Cloud app server.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain for just a moment here. Okay, so why is that the only one that it should have been doing? Huh. Let's see what the chart, scenario columns. Auto Y should be doing these guys. Boom, boom, boom should be the pie chart, but it's doing I hope I didn't break it. And then I got the same error that it said I had a duplicate that time. I'm just going to look at the top level. There. Huh. It should have done this and then put all the detail below it. But here you can see what I was talking about, the segments where I have the small segments interspersed between the larger segments. So this allows us to get the labels spread out. It didn't even have to add any leader lines. And another little trick that we use is the property of the chart. I have my rotation here at 180. But if you get a chart, and I'm going to unlock, if you get a chart that could be better rotated, go into that chart unprotected and select the chart 3D rotation, and then you can play with it and figure out what the optimum rotation is. So I'm going to change it to 140, and then I'm going to change my tilt. I'm going to change my tilt. We'll change it to 90. So the rotation to 140 and tilt to 90. 140, tilt to 90. Change my explosion to 0. And regenerate it. Another little thing that happens behind the scenes that a lot of people wouldn't normally think would be a problem. When we show a data field and a pie chart that has a percentage in it, that because of rounding, you might wind up with the sum of the percentages in the pie chart not equaling 100%. It could show up as like 99%, even though it's like 99.48. And we actually had a client that they were going in and adding up all the segments of the pie chart and then actually editing them by hand to make sure that the percentages added to 100. Well, we fixed that. We actually go through and we add the percentages up in the background after we create the chart, and we adjust it. We take whatever the rounding difference is from 100 and we add it to the top, to the biggest segment. So when it says that the percentage is, all of these should add up perfectly to 100% now. And you can see I changed the rotation and I changed the explode to 0, which that set it back to use the default settings. Probably it should have been a -1 to do that, but it did it on 0. And there was another, and then on the additional columns, and this, if you're going to be working with an existing spreadsheet or existing budget book, if you want to add the percent of total column, you can click auto, which means it's going to pick up the most right hand column, which in this case it's going to be our model amounts. But since 6 and 7 are there as columns, but there's no amount in them, it's going to revert back to the first column here. And so when you add your approved scenario in column and adopted scenario in column, it'll actually pick up the right column and move that percent of total column out. So I'll regenerate that. And we should see the explosion go back down to next to nothing. And we should see the source column showing the very same percentages of the segments in the pie chart and in the data field. What else, Tim? We got a few minutes. We'll be able to look at RC entry sheets.
Did you can move the columns?
Oh yeah.
Rows, but you have to unlock it first.
Oh, these here?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the heading column. Yeah, I want to show that too.
Right.
Okay, so here you can see the collapse went back to something more reasonable. And here's our percent of total, adds to 100%. You can see 41.86. Of course, we have 2 more decimals, but that does round to 41.9. 1.2 on the orange, 1.22. And you can actually add another decimal here. There is a format string for the chart. So if you wanted to show more decimals on the chart, percentages too. Now this, we've been showing all the examples where the the element column is all the way on the right. But we know that a lot of people like to have, where is it? It's in layout, other options, where the element label position is after the actuals. So we're going to change that one setting to where the element label position is that after? After or before adopted? Let's see. Because some people like to show the prior year history on the left, then have the labels, and then the proposed budget on the right. And it's a super simple change. Just tell it where you want the element label position, and that's in the other options. By default, we always invert revenue so that you don't have negative numbers showing up for your revenue. But there is a checkbox that you could have it show up as negative. I don't know why you would want that, but as soon as we did take all the negatives away and show revenue as a positive number, we had to make it an option. Okay. So now you can see the element label are in the middle. I did it right. So our history or our prior year data is to the left, and then our object label, and that's a global setting. So all of your workbooks will come out that way. Now, Tim, I forget, do I have that as a setting?
Which one again?
Can I move the column? I don't think I can. Column formats, layout, other options. Okay, can I move the position? I don't think I can. It's for the whole profile.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. There is another option for headings. We do have some people who column headings. This is the normal heading, but we have a compact heading, and you can move it. Let's move it to the top left. This little option here, heading element names, that's what tells you that it's a fund function element object in the second row of the heading. So this is a more compact, where the fiscal year, actually that should have been aligned to the bottom also, but everything's at WordRep. That's probably why it did it. This is a little cosmetic thing that there. It didn't make that wide enough with the auto size. The settings, I have it by default set to auto fit page width, but that you then have to be careful to make sure you have your columns all set up, because you don't want varying widths, because it's going to scale the texts, and you'll wind up with your budget book content appearing to have different font sizes. So it is almost the only way you're going to get everything to fit is to do the fit page single page width. But you do have control over the individual column widths also in there.
And I've seen where sometimes you have to go and do that report label because the element name is too long, and it makes the report too wide. So you can go into the budget element maintenance and change the label.
Yeah, and that'll shorten it up. And these are nominal widths on your characters. So this is going to ensure you have a uniform look. You can set them up to just auto fit everything, and you can actually wrap the element characters. But historically, anytime I've seen that done, it just doesn't look good. But it is possible. And if there's a -1 in any of the widths, that means it will auto size those columns. What's the other label? That was compact. There's a simple one, and it didn't align. Oh, that's the heading label, that's why it did that. Middle center. Where do they change the alignment? Heading label for the titles. There it is. Title left. So this is in the titles, page title alignment. And is there an underscore? Oh yeah, page title, bottom border, thin. So that's why that element heading label was up and to the left, because I changed the wrong property. I meant to change the title alignment to be left. And then this is going to do the Cascade School District as a subtitle with the that title being aligned to the left, and it's going to put a thin line below it before the actual data or narratives or whatever is coming next in the particular sequence. And this is going to use the simple single row, separate columns. It's not going to merge any of the column headings. And it didn't work. But it is, oh, no, the simple is, right, there's that gray bar underneath that had the $sign in the FTE. So it's a very simple heading box. But this did not align. I will have to merge the title. It did. Page title alignment left and thin. It should have aligned this over here and put a border underneath it. Okay, the other thing you can do, if you want to have your school district name on the top, you would set the organization name as the title, and then the actual section titles will come underneath the school district name. So I am planning to expand that demo profile and actually put it out there as a template. The idea would not be that you would actually use it, but I'm going to expand and use the narratives to kind of just define the different options that are being set to get that particular look and feel. So if you're looking for a particular format, you can look at the ideas. You could, look at what the demo does and then mimic what's happening there with the properties. And what did I change there? I forgot. Oh, yeah, Cascade School District at the top, and then the section title 100 General Fund below it. So you can have it either way. Okay. So is anybody got any questions at this point? I'm gonna pop over and open up the Responsibility Center data entry sheets profile and take a quick look at that if nobody has any questions. Does anybody have any answers?
Did you pull up a remote session to show the saving?
Oh, let me see that. I did. Am I in the right? I am at modeling 5. Let's see if I can bring this over. So now I'm running this version that I'm going to drag over. It's actually running on our RDS server, which is very similar to Citrix. They're actually the same technology under the covers. Years ago, Citrix and Microsoft developed this. Oh, that's weird. RDS isn't letting me drag it over to the other monitor. So I will change screen. I think my fonts are set pretty small. Looks like it's creeping along. I haven't had this open in a long time. But the idea, we'll let that build, come back. The idea is when you're running on Citrix or our cloud service, which everybody is, there's only a few exceptions, and you publish these, but you need to get them to your desktop. And so when you do that, you'll need to set this publish to your TS client. And it's very similar to what's happening with even Infinite Visions or Cynthia, do you guys run? You guys don't run Business Plus in a Citrix server, do you? You run it right on your desktop, or is it all web-based now?
It's all web-based.
Okay, but you're hosting it right there at Richland, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, for the time being, at least. I know Business Plus would like to have everybody up in their cloud. So what have I got? This is my budget book demo, right? Okay. So if I wanted to get this to show up in my documents, I would come in and I'd select this folder, and on this PC, is it on this PC or network? Let's see. CTS client, so it must be network. So both Citrix and RDS use this TS client. So these are all the drives I have mapped on my local machine. But I'm going to go TS client C, and then let's just look at, I'll set it to download file. So that's going to set up this publish to. So when I come into the sections, first of all, I'm going to uncheck all of these, and I did that by, oh, I have to unlock. I did that by selecting everything, and then the space bar will toggle those all off. And then I'm going to enable just this one. And just so we make sure we know what that looks like. Yes.
And you go through that same process here, because when you create these spreadsheets, they're actually being created on our servers or on the Citrix servers. And then you'll need to, when you go to File, Save, point it to your TS client as well.
And let's see, SPC, C drive, download file. Okay, it's empty right now. And it's not going to show up there yet. I just want to make sure we know what it looks like. And then once this generates, the difference between this button, the little Excel button, and I know this is small, and this button, the little process cog with the green arrow, is this button's going to generate every section that has a checkbox in it into a single workbook. And then we're going to click publish, and it's going to actually ask, do we want to publish, and where do we want it? And it'll actually, it doesn't prompt you for the folder, but I'm actually going to add that to that screen, to that form, so you can actually change the target folder if you want to. Okay, so here's our budget book layout. And it had a cover sheet. We didn't really talk about that, but you can add a cover sheet. There's a section, right, of properties for cover sheet. But this is what it'll look like. And so now I'm going to click the publish, and I'm going to say publish to folder, and it's using that folder that I set it up with, and you can set it up to overwrite to files if they exist. I think it automatically adds a timestamp, and I'll click create. Yes, I want to use that setting. And it's basically going to do what I just did, but it's now in more of a publishing mode, and it's going to create that worksheet and then copy it down to the local folder, so it's actually available on my desktop. And that mapping is kind of universal again between Citrix and RDS. And I'm sure that anybody who's using Visions on Citrix has experienced that. So we still haven't gotten to, right, I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to change the template to budget entry worksheets template. I'm just going to switch. I'm not going to save anything. And I'm going to say yes, edit template. Again, that's my prompt. You won't ever see that. And again, it's set up with the current scenario, so it's automatically going to map the current scenario that I'm coming from into there. And we do have responsibility centers set up. So I have a section over here, and it's set up to use one of my schools, which is Adams Middle School. And I'm going to trigger this to generate, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit because it's 3 o'clock and we're supposed to be done. Then I'm going to come back while that's running on that virtual machine. This is still running. It's just calculating page break, so it's almost done. It's creating a TOC, table of content. That's the option when you publish. Okay, fine. So, is there many people on the cloud server, Tim? Seems like it's running slow.
Nope.
It was running faster on my virtual machine. Override existing workbooks. Oh, they must see download file. There's nothing there. There it is. So now I've got it on my local system.
Anybody have any questions about how to point that back to your local computer or network? You might probably already know how to do it because you have to do it with Citrix.
Okay, so here's Adams Middle School. This is a data entry sheet. And we're actually using the responsibility center setup. They can be automated to follow your budget control groups and visions. If not, they can use a budget element like the center, or you can build hybrid responsibility centers using a masking, account masking, where you can have pretty granular control over what they see. In this particular case, we set the background colors to mimic the colors that you would see in the ESP main application, where the purple is the actuals, the blue is our last year's adopted, and then this is their proposed column. On the responsibility centers tab, we see it, Adams has $90,000 for their allocation. And that is actually entered directly on the responsibility center grid. And Adams, there's the $90,000 there. I'll set this up to be budget targets. And so I can add a new amount variance, very similar to managing the financial grid. For Adams Middle School, there's the 90,000. If I wanted to say they get, I could actually add 5%. Oh, I have. At 5%. There we go. From $81,955. Oh, right. It's adding it because I have the source set to be the working, which is this allocated working. It's adding 5%, 0.05. And so 78,052 times 1.05 is 81,955. So that's actually what I had in there. And so that amount shows up here as their allocation. And then as they enter their budget amounts, if I put in $10,000 there, I put in $70,000. Oops, I still haven't spent all 90,000. So I'm going to put in 30,000 right there, and it's going to say, "Oops, sorry, you're over. Now you're $20,000 over your 90,000 allocation." So these narratives, they're all rich text format. They actually have tokens in there where it'll pick up the fiscal year. It'll pick up, you can see the primary approver is me, but if I look at workflow, if I look at the budget office manager, you can see it's set to Scott admin, which is automatically pick up Scott admin. It's going to look at the user administration to pick up my contact email and a telephone number for contacting me. And by using the budget control groups, if they're set up in Visions, as you add budget control groups, they'll automatically be added to ESP during the reload. So here's Scott admin, and you can see here's my email, there's my contact information. So you can actually have, if you're a larger organization and you want to split up the responsibility for like one person over the high schools, one person over middle schools, a couple people over elementary schools, you can assign different budget managers for each responsibility center. And it includes the account code. These are importable. You can re-import them, or you can just look at the proposed amounts once they're sent back and enter the changes. And then at the bottom, you can actually, there's an option on the page setup to include the account map. So you can see fund, function, object, just helping them. There's some cases where you'll get the duplicated object code. I don't know that we have any here. You get a duplicated object code where the sub area changes. And if they don't remember what each of these segments are, they can look down here at the bottom and figure that out. So these have actually been very, very popular this year. The thing is, you do have to remember, if you are going to include any salary objects, such as temps or substitutes, if you are not using contracted subs, which should be purchased services anyway in the 300 series in Oregon, and I forget where they'd be in Washington. But if you have temp salaries in here, this spreadsheet will not calculate your employee indirect costs. So you're going to have to allow for that if they put in a dollar amount for temporary subs or just temporary employees that will incur salary costs, that will be in addition to the amounts here. So that will be solved with the fully blown manager's webpage, where they'll be able to put their amounts in just like this, and it will automatically calculate that. So their allocations will be exactly right, calculated just as if you did the adjustments. So budget status reports, and we will set these up to where they will automatically email out, if probably, hopefully by next year. I've just had a lot of really good distractions this year, but I'd hope to have these automatically emailing, and that will be an option in the publishing instead of saving them to a folder, to actually email them out to the, and then they would be emailed back. The reply email would be set to whoever their manager was set up to be. A lot of well, I would say a lot. We do have districts that are now setting up a budget office or a budget at Cascade ESP, a budget at Jefferson County. So there's actually a budget email box that's a shared mailbox for the department that things can be sent back into. Let's see, that was budget entry, budget status. Oh, let's see what this looks like. This isn't the template, but let's see if if it's set up. So we're gonna have 3 years of actual. We're actually showing the total, the year-to-date amount, the encumbrance, and the total amount. And let's see, I've got it set up for all schools. Do I have a limit? I'm gonna do 3. It's set up to 3. It shouldn't take that long. So I'm gonna generate this. And again, now, with budget status, since you really want it to work off your daily snapshot, that's actually an auto scenario mode for, we had custom scenarios, current scenario, and then daily snapshot is another option. And that means it's automatically going to use the daily snapshot. And that's really what you want to use for your budget status reports, because that's going to have the most up to date. The only time you would not want to use it is in the year-to-date actuals. There's the actuals amount, the encumbrance, and the total amount. In the model, on the financial grid, there's an actuals adjustment column where you could, if you know something's going to come up that's going to hit a cost center, it just doesn't yet exist in Visions, but you want it to be reflected in the year-to-date costs, you could put that in the year actuals adjustment column, and then you would have to use that model scenario to do your actuals or to do the scenario status. Let's see what this looks like. We cannot yet do any employee-based worksheets, but those should be coming. We will be able to have exports, so you can do custom SQL if you want some custom SQL reports to be included. The idea is that you want it to have the same look and feel and color schemes as everything else. That's one of the things I see in a lot of budget books, is you can tell that a worksheet or a chart or something came from a totally different application because it got pasted in and doesn't flow well because it's just a totally different formatting. That will take any Excel spreadsheet and hopefully format it so it looks like it all originated from the same spots. Eventually, we're going to have images where you can put logos in the upper corners or the lower corners. The separator sheets or cover sheets on the sections, be able to put an image in. That's real popular, to have some type of artwork that originated from within the school or schools to be included in the budget book. You know, a lot of you do that in external tools. I envision that this could do all of that eventually. You just have to stitch the files together. Where are we at? 2 of 3. So, any questions? You're gonna have to speak now. Oh, I do want to show the, see, I could talk all day about budget book. There's so many options. We still have another one to go. Goody Elementaries could be. I found out there actually is a Cascade School District in Oregon. We picked it as our demo database, and then the district we collect the data from, we sterilize all the school names and call them names of mountains within the Cascade Pacific Northwest. But then I did run into the business manager from Cascade School District in Salem last month. Almost done. Okay. So here's Thielsen Elementary School. Again, it's the same hierarchy and account in the columns, but this on the budget status report, you can put the remaining dollars and percent. So you can see, in this case, the year to date is 482, but there was nothing budgeted, so they're $482 over, and it color codes. You can turn the color coding off, and you can pick which columns. But this is kind of like the full meal deal. We'll just show you your over and unders and percent of budgets. And Chestina, oh, they're looking good. And then we actually probably could add the allocation to that too. If your allocation, although this comes from the daily snapshot, you'd have to somehow preserve your allocation into the daily snapshot. Oh, yeah. Maybe that's not such a good idea. Okay, the last thing is, if we wanted to budget status reports, just like we saw on the, budget data entry sheets, there's a narrative and footers. You can define a global narrative. And you can put in, this is the fiscal year, and then there's a whole list of tokens. And make this red, make this bold, make this underscore. Okay, so if I make that my narrative, and make this my footer, so they're going to be the same. And then over on the sections, on the page setup, oh no, excuse me, it's on the narrative. Use global narrative. I could have an individual narrative here, but if I tell it to use global narrative, set it to one section. So we're only going to generate one, and then I promise we'll be done. Unless you have more questions. I'll stay on till all hours of the night if you have questions. But I think everybody knows how to get a hold of us if we don't.
Yeah, sometimes we have to look through all these properties to find the right one. There's a lot of properties.
We're looking for volunteer tech writers too, if anybody wants to help us out. That's what we should do, is find somebody ready to retire who's used ESP and let them generate documentation for us. Come on. You can also set scopes up for district office grants, specific grants. You could map different grants to different grant managers if you have a large organization. Okay, so there's the global narrative I put, and this would appear at the top of every worksheet that was generated, so you can put instructions or whatever you need to. And I didn't put it in did I tell it? I probably told it not. Yeah, I see I didn't click use global footer, so it didn't show up down there, but it would have shown up the same text. Okay. Questions, answers. If not, y'all have a good day, and just email us your questions, ideas, concerns. Okay, y'all have a nice day. Thank you.
All right, guys, let us know if you need anything. And I'll have this recording up soon.